بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, in this session we continue our discussion about the second 7 year of Tarbiyah, and this will complete our discussion about this stage, and then inshallah next session we will talk about the third 7 years. One of the things that we need to observe in this period is how to deal with media, and especially social media. In the past, TV, newspapers, magazines, even in the early years, internet were like unexpected guests. So sometimes without you inviting them, they were in your home. But now it has reached a point that sometimes they are more present in your home than yourself. They are more affecting your children than yourself. It's very sensitive issue. For sure, we can regulate, we can control. For example, there is no need to give smartphones to our children in very early stage of life. Initially, they don't need to have any phone, and later they can have just a simple phone to contact home if they need help, if you want to check they are all right. There is no need everyone has smartphone, there is no need everyone has a laptop. Depends on the age requirement, and little by little we can, when we are sure that they know how to use it, we can upgrade. But we cannot altogether eliminate social media and internet from our homes, from beginning to the end. We should regulate, we should control, we should have a plan. So we want to mention some points here. I had a lecture, or maybe 2 lectures, about how we should use cyber space, and also I have a paper about e-ethics, so maybe you find them also useful. The first point that we need to mention is that if we want to have responsible use of social media by our children, when they should have access, not before that of course, but when there is the time that they should have access, and we want them to have this responsible use, so that the whole family should have responsible use and should be, God-fearing in this. It's not possible that, for example, father or mother or elder brother, sibling or sister, they use internet and social media irresponsibly and expect this child, to be very, controlled, very moderate in using social media. So we need to be very careful. If father, mother, when they watch movie or they watch, internet or website, and whether you like it or not, they would realize what they watch. You cannot always say, okay, they are not in this room, I watch. All of a sudden they come, or sometimes you forget to switch off, they are there. So we need to observe very pious, God-fearing usage of internet, social media, movies, TV by ourselves. So even if someone, God forbid, is not careful about himself or herself, for the sake of their children, they have to be careful. Even maybe something for your age is okay, but for their age is not okay. So you have to be very careful. So we all together need to avoid anything which is not good for them. Even, for example, some of the things are not a matter of haram, but are useless, waste of time. Our children should learn not to waste their time by watching things which are not useful. If it's something that gives some kind of energy, it's kind of relaxation, it's fine. But if it's just waste of time, no. So we have to be very careful. And the second thing is that we should plan to have a usage of these media as a family. So if your child wants to watch something and think it's useful, watch with your child. We together watch something. We together listen something. We together read something as entertainment, as in learning, as seeking information, etc. So this is very helpful. And also, please don't put TV in children's room. Actually, my advice is that in no room other than the common room, there must be TV. If there is need to be TV, to have TV. I have Christian friends that they don't have TV in their home. Don't be surprised. In some countries, TV is not really good. In some countries, maybe it's mixed. In some countries, maybe it's more good, sometimes more bad. So, if you have to have the TV, just one TV in the common room. If you don't put in your own bedroom, they don't expect to have it in their own bedroom. There is one in common room, everyone uses together. If possible also, if they want to use computer, should be a desktop where other people can also see and watch. There is no need to be here, something secret. If we do the same, they also learn the same. It's a deep common room, it's a study room, all people can go there. So we have to be very careful about this. And ask your friends, ask committee members, search to find useful programs, useful things, movies, etc. to watch, maybe games to play together, so that you don't take risk or just wait for something comes up by itself. And the third thing is that try to find also a good alternative. So instead of just watching, game or football match on TV for hours and hours, I'm not saying to eliminate it. You should plan for it, but at least have other alternatives. For example, sport in real sense, not watching sport. Go with your children to park or somewhere to play, or with other families to play. Go to nature, go to mountains, go to near river, whatever is available. Offer good things as alternative, because it's not working to say don't do this and then you don't offer anything. There should be something good to replace that. The last point for the second 7 years is about sexual tarbiyah. What do we mean? We mean that this is the stage that we need to be very careful about their sexual orientation. For sure, they develop understanding and maybe some desires. Certain things become attractive to them in this age. This is very natural. We don't need to speed up. We don't need to rush. Unfortunately, in modern culture, either on the street or on movies, etc., and sometimes in the schools, they just rush and they make children exposed to sexual, things much earlier. There is no need to rush. This comes in its own time. We need to prepare them for that. We need to be aware of that, and we need to prevent anything that can cause problem. They should have a clear identity of their own gender. So this is why it's very important. Girls mix with each other, boys get mixed with each other, they play together, girls know more about women, boys know more about men, so that their orientation becomes more and more clear. And also they realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a plan for everything in our life. There is no accident. There's no chance that we have sexual desires or sexual attractions. There's a reason, there's a wisdom behind it. But this should be approached with care, with taqwa, and in Islamic way, which is marriage. Everything should be limited to marriage. When they reach the level of maturity, physically, mentally, spiritually, and they can be responsible for their choices, they can let another person to rely on them and make the other person happy. They marry, and their happiness comes, and then together they can house children. They can welcome children to this world. So there is nothing outside marriage for satisfaction of sexual desires. Even looking at non-mahram, strangers, is to be avoided. Reading magazines or watching sites, movies which can be stimulating should be avoided. Everything should be clean, tayyib, and its own time with its own conditions. So, one of the things that we find in Islamic culture is that how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Ahlul Bayt dealt with such issues, whether for their own family members or for others. For example, I want to share with you this story. A young man went to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he said, "Oh Rasulullah, do you give me permission for zina, na'udhu billah, for fornication, adultery, fornication?" Rasulullah didn't, get angry and shout at him, although some people who were around were very upset and, they were very shocked, how he asked Rasulullah for permission. But Rasulullah asked him to go closer. And that person went and sat next to the Prophet. And Rasulullah, with kindness and love, told him, "Do you like someone have fornication with your mother? Do you want someone to have fornication with your sister, for example?" So he asked these questions and the young person said no. So Rasulullah said, other people don't want this. So if you don't want someone to have this with your mother or sister or daughter, then you should not expect to have right to do this with other people's mothers or daughters or sisters. So this man, who was an honest person, then realized, yes, he didn't pay attention to this aspect of this. It's not something just between you and that woman, even if that woman is, okay. What about all the family who would be affected? They have also rights in this. So this person then realized that that was a mistake. And then Rasulullah put his hand on the chest of this young person and prayed for him. And he said, "Oh Allah, please purify his heart, forgive his sins, and protect him from lacking chastity and iffah." And that person from that moment on was someone who said that fornication was the most disliked thing in my view. So Rasulullah didn't avoid this discussion. He didn't say, why you ask me this? This is obvious. He kindly talked to this person, clarified for him. He didn't just say it's haram. He tried to clarify, and also he prayed for him. And then you see how this person was saved and changed. Another thing, in addition to this method that we explained, that you with kindness you explain to your children, is isti'adha. To ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give refuge or shelter to your children from temptations of shaitan. Isti'adha is a very important concept in the Quran and Islamic culture. Not only Islamic culture, all divine traditions. We find it in the history of the prophets. Inshallah, I will mention something about Lady Mary, about Yusuf ala nabiyina wa alayhi salam. So it really works. It's quite some time that I love to give, inshallah, some lectures on isti'adha in English. I had, I think, 3 lectures in Farsi recently in Stockholm about a year ago. And inshallah, I hope in English soon we can have a series on isti'adha. It's very important. It's not just something we do for the sake of thawab and getting reward. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Yes, we get reward. It's a dhikr. But it really works. It's a kind of protection. It's a kind of bringing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to defend you. It's very important. So, Quran says in Surah A'raf, verse 200, and Surah Fussilat, verse 36, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, wa imma yanzaghannaka minash shaitanir nazghun, fasta'idh billah innahu sami'un alim. وَإِمَّا يَنزَغَنَّكَ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ نَزْغٌ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ إِنَّهُ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ. This ayah is repeated 2 times. When shaitan wants to bring temptation to you, ask Allah for refuge. Truly Allah is hearing and knowledgeable. He hears your call, your request for protection. He's aware of temptations of shaitan. He knows everything. Alim. He knows what is happening. He knows how to help. وَإِمَّا يَنزَغَنَّكَ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ نَزْغٌ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ إِنَّهُ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ. Look at some cases from Quran and see how isti'adha worked. So we should always ask Allah to protect our children and say, please give them refuge. When we read the story of Prophet Yusuf ala nabiyina wa alayhi salam, we find that Zulaykha had prepared everything to invite Yusuf alayhi salam to haram relation. In Surah Yusuf, verse 23, Allah says, وَغَلَّقَتِ الْأَبْوَابِ وَقَالَتْ حَيْتَ لَكَ. She completely locked up all the doors and said, come on, hurry. Or in some interpretations, I am prepared for you. So hayta lak either means come on, hurry, or means I am prepared, tahayyatu. But what did Yusuf alayhi salam say? That prophet, he said, قال معاذ الله. He said, I ask God for protection. He didn't go for haram, obviously, but he didn't also rely only on his own power. As we say, لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. So he asked Allah to give him protection. معاذ الله means أستعيذ بالله, أعوذ بالله. I ask Allah to give me and provide me with shelter and protection. Or for example, when women were asking him or expecting him to have affair with them, how did Yusuf manage to protect himself? He asked Allah for help. And he said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, oh Allah, if you don't protect me, then I might, have inclination towards them. He said, قال رب السجن أحب إلي مما يدعونني إليه. To be put in prison is better for me, is preferable to what they call me to. وَإِلَّا تَصْرِفْ عَنِّي كَيْدَهُنَّ. If you don't keep away their plots, their plans, أَصْبُ إِلَيْهِنَّ, I would be inclined towards them. وَأَكُنْ مِنَ الْجَاهِلِينَ, and become one of the ignorant people. So Yusuf alayhi salam asked Allah for help. This is Surah Yusuf, verse 33. Also in verse 53, the famous ayah, وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَ رَبِّي. I don't say I am very good. I don't do tazkiyah of myself, to say I'm pure, I'm good. Nafs commands to do bad things. Nafs ammare. If your nafs is not transformed into nafs al-lawwam and mutmainnah, may ask you to do bad things. Illa ma rahim rabbi. Unless Allah sends His mercy. One of the functions of mercy is to protect from nafs ammare. In series on understanding mercy, we explain this. So you see, someone like Yusuf alayhi salam managed to remain pious despite temptations coming, invitations coming, even by force, by different kinds of plans. But he managed to remain pious and pure. Why? Because he asked Allah for help. وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ وَهَمَّ بِهَا لَوْلَا أَنْ رَأَى بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ. Zulaykha had intention to have affair with Yusuf. And Yusuf would have had also the same. لَوْلَا أَنْ رَأَى بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ. Had it not that Yusuf had seen burhan, a clear proof from his Lord. So, because he had this burhan, he didn't have this desire or inclination or intention of going. So he didn't decide for haram. But if there was no burhan, proof, a kind of like vision, maybe he saw the malakuti side of this action. If you are able to see the reality or malakuti aspect of zina, you would see it's so ugly. You don't want to approach. Any haram, if you are able to see its real face, you would find that it's very disgusting. So, isti'adha works. Or in the case of Lady Maryam Salamullah alayha. In some lectures about Lady Maryam, I have explained, and also in one lecture about Tarbiyah I have mentioned. Quran says mother of Lady Maryam Salamullah alayha, after Lady Maryam was born, she asked Allah to take care of this girl. أعيذها بك وذريتها. Oh Allah, I ask you to give refuge, shelter to Maryam and her progeny min ash-shaytan, from Satan. This is ista'adha. You can do ista'adha for yourself, you can do ista'adha for your work, you can do ista'adha for your children, especially when children are still at very early stage of your life. Because if they are adults, you can still ask Allah for help, but it very much also depends on them. But a newborn baby or a small child, then it's more a matter of parents' decision. And this is why Allah says, فَتَقَبَّلَهَا رَبُّهَا بِقَبُولٍ حَسَنٍ. If I want to submit my 15, 20, 30 years old children to Allah, Allah may accept, but it very much depends on them. But a newborn child is innocent, a child who is not yet born even, and it's all at this stage relying on the parents. If you manage to make a deal with Allah and ask Allah to take care of your children at this age, and say, you are in charge, I am at your service. Not that, I don't want to work. I am going to do my best. But I cannot upbring my children without you. You are the main person in charge of tarbiyah of my children. So mother of Lady Maryam, she asked Allah to protect not only Maryam, but also progeny of Maryam. And what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? فَتَقَبَّلَهَا رَبُّهَا بِقَبُولٍ حَسَنٍ وَأَنْبَتَهَا نَبَاتًا حَسَنًا وَكَفَّلَهَا زَكَرِيَّا. Allah accepted Maryam in a beautiful way of accepting. Because when Allah accepts something, He does everything needed, completes the job in a beautiful way, and grew her up in a beautiful way. It's Hasan means beautiful, good and beautiful. Qabulan Hasanan, Nabatan Hasanan. And Allah made His Prophet take care of Maryam. But Maryam exceeded in some aspects her guardian. وَكُلَّمَا دَخَلَ عَلَيْهَا زَكَرِيَّا الْمِحْرَابَ وَجَدَ عِنْدَهَا رِزْقًا. To the extent that things happened to Maryam that Prophet Zakaria didn't know, let alone being able to help Maryam with that, So it was not because of help of Zakaria that food was coming to Lady Maryam from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Maryam herself had such a great relation with Allah that kullama, every time, not just once, not few times, kullama dakhala, every time Prophet Zakaria was visiting Lady Maryam in a place of worship, was finding next to her rizqan, some sustenance. قال أنى لك هذا, this, where is it coming this for you? Every time I come to here, for example, fresh fruits, especially fruits which are not fruits of this season, and Maryam is not going, shopping, spending lots of time, shopping and buying things that are not available, etc. Maybe she was not leaving even the temple unless for necessary things. Where does this come? First of all, you don't go out. Secondly, this is not available in the market. If it is once, we say, okay, maybe someone gifted him. Maybe it's twice, maybe someone gifted. But every time. Then she said, قالت هذا من عند الله. And then she said, إن الله يرزق من يشاء بغير حساب. Allah gives sustenance to those that He wills without hisab, without measuring. هنالك دعا زكريا ربه. This inspired Prophet Zechariah to again pray for having a son who would inherit him. So, Maryam Salamullah alayha is a result, I'm not saying only this, but is a result of her mother's request from Allah for refuge. فَتَقَبَّلَهَا رَبُّهَا بِقَبُولٍ. After what? أُعِيذُهَا بِكَ وَذُرِّيَّتَهَا مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. Or when this Archangel Gabriel, Jibreel, or maybe Ruhul Qudus manifested for Maryam as a man. فَتَمَثَّلَ لَهَا بَشَرًا سَوِيًّا, was a complete man, very attractive, beautiful man, because angels can take form of human beings, or even, for example, sometimes birds, etc. Philosophers say they can take any form, even animals, birds, human beings, except dog and pig. So, Maryam Salamullah alayha was very, pious lady, and she was, worried that although this person looks very nice, looks like a God-fearing person, but still it's worrying, because when two na-mahram are together, even if one is Yusuf, even one is Maryam, you have to be careful. You cannot take risk. So she said, إِنِّي أَعُوذُ بِالرَّحْمَنِ مِنْكَ إِن كُنْتَ تَقِيًّا. If you are a God-fearing person, which seems to be the case, I am asking Ar-Rahman, God, to give protection. A God-fearing person, when he hears there's a lady who is also asking God for protection, knows that now if she is asking God for protection, so means that God is present there. And if this man has any ill intention, would be facing Allah. So for a God-fearing person, this is a great reminder, great, kind of awakening. So, isti'adha here also comes. Not only the mother of Mary did this, but Mary also herself is using isti'adha. So one of the things that we need to do with our children is isti'adha, and teach them also to do isti'adha in a kind of meaningful way. You cannot do isti'adha and put yourself in risk. Like for example, we say, if God forbids there is, for example, air strikes, go to shelter. So if you just say, I go to shelter, I go to shelter, I go to shelter, and you don't go to shelter, it doesn't work. When you say, means you really mean that, and you are putting yourself in that. Then, the next thing is that we need to teach our children not to be in locations which are risky, and we should not also put them in locations which are risky. For example, when they are very young, sometimes maybe parents are not careful about making them asleep in another room, especially when father and mother want to sleep together and maybe have some relation, no child must be in that room, even if it is a small child. It's very dangerous. And we have hadith. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Walladhi nafsi biyadih, لو أن رجلا غش امرأته وفي البيت صبي مستيقظ يراهما ويسمع كلامهما ونفسهما ما أفلح أبدا إذا كان غلاما كان زانيا أو جارية كانت زانية إذا كان غلاما كان زانيا إذا كان أو جارية كانت زانية." This is in Al-Kafi. So basically it means that they should not have marital relation when there is a child who may hear their voice or see them. Otherwise, this child in future may, na'udhu billah, become someone who would be committing adultery or fornication, whether it's boy or girl. So it's very important to have separate bedroom, or at least at certain times they should sleep separately. Also, children should not sleep after a certain age in the same bed or on the same mattress. They should sleep separately. Of course, if you have a son, daughter, that they are reaching, for example, certain age, in the hadith, for example, says 10 years, you should separate the rooms if possible. But from even before that, you should separate the beds. Children should not sleep together after a few years. So in these second 7 years, we need to observe that. For example, there is a hadith which says, this is from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "As-sabiyyu was-sabi, was-sabiyyu was-sabiyya, was-sabiyyatu was-sabiyya." So whether there are two boys, or one boy, one girl, or two girls, يفرق بينهم في المضاجع لعشر سنين. They should be sleeping separately from year 10, maybe even earlier, but this is the last chance. It shouldn't be delayed from this. So this is also very important. It can avoid many problems. Also, when, for example, they want to go to society, for example, the way girls should walk and go to the public, boys, for example, the way go out, then relation with non-mahram, with the strangers, all are very important. They should not put themselves in risk. They should not remain in the same place with non-mahram alone, or they should not get in conversations with non-mahram which is very kind of attracting. Especially girls should not be showing too much humbleness or kindness to non-mahram, because then they may think negatively about them and may think they can misuse them. Girls especially should be, when it comes to non-mahram, they should be almost like an arrogant person. They are really arrogant, but takabbur here is good for women in the sense that they shouldn't show humbleness to the people so that they can think these are weak people, they can take advantage of them. One of the things we find about Prophet Yusuf is that when Zulaykha locked and closed all the doors and invited him, and he said ma'adallah, then Quran says wastabaqa al-bab, verse 25 of Surah Yusuf. Wastabaqa. So Yusuf didn't stay there. Yusuf ran away to go out. Of course, Zulaykha also followed him to keep him, not to let him go. And this is why she, took the shirt of Yusuf from behind, and the shirt was torn apart from behind. So Yusuf tried to run away from this location, from this environment. You shouldn't, go to risky environment and say, inshallah, Allah will help me, or I am a strong person. Even if you are Yusuf, don't put yourself into a risky situation. Why? Hadith says, when there is a man and woman who are non-mahram in one place and there is no one else, shaitan is the third person. So we have to be very careful. Also, we should avoid befriending friends who encourage us to do these things. If your girl has a friend that she says, I have a boyfriend, I go to this gathering, and little by little it can affect your girl. Or your son has a friend who is like this, can affect. So you have to be very careful. The other method is that in addition to avoiding conversation with non-mahram, or making jokes with non-mahram, or presenting yourself to non-mahram, or being in a place lonely with non-mahram, or looking at pictures which are, or movies which are, stimulating, or touching non-mahram, any kind of physical, contact with non-mahram. In addition to these things which are for prevention, we should also empower ourselves with remembrance of Allah. This is positive, constructive way. It's not just prevention. Strengthen yourself with remembrance of Allah, with fasting. If you are under pressure, or your child is under pressure, there is no time for marriage, or there is no suitable, fasting can help a lot. Observing hijab not only as a code of dress, but as code of behavior and interaction with non-mahram. Remembrance of death, visiting the dead people, remembering especially the day of judgment, and how we are going to have eternal life. This is a very short period of time. All these things help us to be empowered. I would like to end with a beautiful story from Allama Muhammad Taqi Ja'fari, Ridwanullah Ta'ala alayh. He was a contemporary scholar. He died a few years ago. He has a very useful commentary on Nahj al-Balagha in more than 20 volumes. He has commentary on Masnavi by Mahdawi. He has many books. So when he was in Najaf for a study, then one day it was very hot, and some talaba got together. One person who was known to be very humorous said, I have brought a picture from one of the magazines of a beautiful lady. So said to those few people who were there, which of you prefers to live with this person, to be his wife, to meeting Amirul Mu'mineen for a moment, or prefers meeting Amirul Mu'mineen for a moment to living with this woman, beautiful woman, for whole life? So this was the question. So some said, inshallah, I will see Amirul Mu'mineen when I die. So I prefer to live with such beautiful woman all my life. Allama Ja'fari was very upset. He was a young talaba. He didn't even look at that picture, because he was sending around the picture to see and then say, what's your opinion? He went to his own room, hujra, but it was very warm, so he just sat outside on a staircase and then went to sleep. Although it was not time of sleep, but sometime you have to see something, so you go to sleep. It was meant to happen. In this dream, let me read for you exactly what he says. So he says, I found myself in a rather big, large hall. And there were some of ulama of the past, and in the top place in Majlis, there was a bed or like a throne. Amirul Mu'minin was sitting on that. There was Qambar, there was Malik Ashtar. Amirul Mu'minin called me towards himself with my name, and he says, I eagerly went towards Amirul Mu'minin salam, and I saw myself in the arms of Amirul Mu'minin, and he says, I was so happy to be in that condition, and I found Imam Ali as described in the hadith. And then he says, I woke up. And he says, from the time that I sat next to my hujra, but outside on the stairs, till I woke up was only about 8 minutes. And he says, then I went back to the meeting of those people, and I saw they are still, busy with that picture. And I told them, Alhamdulillah, I've got result of my decision. So he said, because his idea was that you should not even compare seeing Amirul Mu'minin for a moment to living with this woman, even if she is very beautiful. And then he says, from that time my tawfiq increased. He became a mujtahid, he became a philosopher, he was a commentator of Nahj al-Balagha, Masnavi. He was a great alim, mashallah. He had communications with some of great philosophers of the West. So he says that increased my tawfiq. So why I should look at bad picture? Why I should, put myself in risk? We can instead empower ourselves with remembrance of Allah, with seeing good things, with thinking about Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. So, inshallah, in the next session, we will start discussing the third 7 years of Tarbiyah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.